Hey, everybody, it is Reggie with Lawyer Interviews. Today, we are talking with Chrissie, who is out of both the UAE and the UK. Hi, Chrissie, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Very good. And I'm so glad we were able to connect our time zones because we're worlds apart. I mean, well, not worlds, 11 hours. So I'm so glad we could connect because you are just an amazing force on social media. And like I already told you, I'm just like fangirling hardcore right now. So I'd love you to tell our viewers about you a little bit, like what you practice, how you ended up both a, attorney or barrister in the UK and how you're in the UAE now.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a very long story how I ended up in the law. So I didn't intend to be a lawyer from when I was young. Actually, I really wanted to be a vet. I absolutely loved animals. My house was full of animals. My mum loved animals. You know, she just like had every animal under the sun. She loved it. So I really wanted to grow up being a vet. And in the UK, I grew up in the UK. So I was born in the UK. My dad's actually from the US, but I was born in the UK and I've lived my whole life in the UK until very recently. So in the UK, there's only a handful of vet schools in the UK, very, very tough to get into, extremely difficult from a grades point of view. So I realized that I probably wasn't going to make it into vet school quite early on because I didn't have the grades. Anyway, didn't do so brilliantly in my academics actually when I was younger. So kind of had to go the back way into university and did an access course. Ended up doing an access course in chemistry and then followed that up with an undergraduate degree in animal biology, which was kind of the next best thing to being a vet.
Yeah.
So I got my undergraduate degree in that and got to the end of that. That was 4 years by the time, 4 years of uni, got to the end of that and really didn't know what I wanted to do, in all honesty. I went to my careers advisor who said, well, you know, a lot of people with science degrees actually go into law. And I thought, this is the first time I thought about going into law. And I was, 21 at this point or something like that. Never thought about it before. Kind of had this idea of lawyers, everybody working really long hours, kind of, kept away in offices, stuffy suits, surrounded by papers and books. Like it just didn't really seem like it was for me. But I kind of started looking into it. And he said, you've got this science background. There's a couple of areas of law which really lend themselves to science. So one of these is medical law. Personal injury, medical law, medical negligence, and the other one is intellectual property and patents. So I kind of went away and explored both of these things and realized quite quickly that I was more interested in the kind of medical side of law and kind of saw myself really kind of getting into this. When I looked at really what medical lawyers do, they liaise a lot with doctors, they read a lot of medical records, it's really very kind of technical actually, and you kind of almost have to be almost as medically trained as a doctor in some ways. And I kind of got really excited about this. So I started doing a little bit of work experience, found a firm that I really liked, which was the best firm in the UK for this kind of work, called Irwin Mitchell. Applied, didn't get through my first year, but I did get through the second year for what's called a training contract. So in the UK, you have to do effectively like a 2-year kind of apprenticeship, or you might call it a traineeship. So you have to get a firm to sponsor you for 2 years training, basically, and then you qualify as a lawyer at the end of that training period. So that's always quite difficult to get in the UK. So I was really happy to get it with this firm. So I started my training in 2013 and I qualified in 2015 into a very niche area of medical law. Actually, I actually qualified into international medical law. So this is basically people who've been injured abroad, and I did injury law as well. So people who've been injured either through an accident or through medical reasons. So I did a lot of cosmetic surgery cases. So a lot of people go abroad to have cosmetic. So that was my niche speciality, is people who've gone abroad to have cosmetic surgery procedures that have then gone wrong. So I specialized in that area for, the best part of 8 years, nearly actually. And then I finally actually stepped down from Irwin Mitchell earlier this year to be self-employed and go freelance. So, and that kind of stemmed from a kind of side hustle, which I started building initially just after I qualified, which was sort of mentoring, started off as just mentoring aspiring lawyers who were trying to break into the profession, because I had a really tough time. I didn't have the best academics. I didn't have lots of work experience, didn't have loads of connections. And, I found it really tough. And as soon as I did it, I kind of started telling my story on YouTube to kind of hopefully give people some hope and some tips for kind of how I did what I did. And then that kind of grew into other social media platforms, kind of one-to-one coaching events. And then I kind of built this platform, which has now got kind of I think we've just reached 75,000 followers across the platform.
Yeah, I
which
mean,
is,
you're a powerhouse now. I mean, like something that started as a side project to grow like this. Could you have ever imagined that when you first started this?
absolutely not. Honestly, I wanted to do sort of face-to-face mentoring, and I had a couple of mentees who I was mentoring, and I kind of thought, you know what, I wish I could do this on a bigger scale, but I'm a qualified lawyer. I just don't have enough hours in the day to take on mentees. And a really good friend of mine, simultaneously, she was actually she'd built up a YouTube channel doing something completely different. She was talking about Disney actually, but I kind of saw what she'd done here. She had this audience, huge numbers of views, huge numbers of followers and subscribers. And I was like, maybe I can kind of do something with this. Maybe I can sort of cultivate my mentoring online. And I wanted it to be in a free format because I wanted it to reach people who perhaps didn't have the resources, weren't going to the top universities, didn't have access to, other people. I wanted it to be on a free platform. So I thought maybe I can use YouTube. And, I started looking around YouTube, nothing really like that. Really, like no kind of mentor. This was back in, I launched back in 2016 or 17, I think. And it was kind of, when YouTube was still very much a platform for kind of beauty bloggers. And, if your washing machine broke, you Google how to fix it on YouTube.
Tutorials. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I never really thought of it as an education resource at that stage. And I hadn't really found a lot of, particularly in law, kind of people using it to educate. So I thought maybe this just isn't a thing, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe people aren't interested. Maybe people have tried and failed and whatever. So I thought I'm going to try. And, but I said to myself, I'm going to stick at it for a year because I know this isn't going to be something which is going to take off overnight because it's not a market that really exists. If it's beauty, you've got people searching for beauty all over YouTube. I thought people aren't going to be searching for this content. It's going to take a while for it to kind of build some momentum. And I had 0 kind of followers when I started. So I didn't really have a huge amount of people to market it to. So I just said, I'm going to keep at it. And it was painful at the beginning. It was kind of like a handful of views. I think someone commented like, oh, you've got like 10 views on this video. That's one step away from talking to yourself,
Oh, God. You're like, thanks for the vote of confidence. Thank you.
It took me like 5 hours of my free time, which I have very little. I was a newly qualified solicitor, and you're telling me it's basically talking to myself. Thanks very much. So it was tough at the beginning. It was really tough, but I kind of stuck at it. And then eventually, about 6 months in, actually, a legal publication in the UK called Legal Cheek, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek legal publication, as you can expect, but it was kind of mainly aimed at kind of junior lawyers. They picked up and they ran a story on it. And, overnight I got to kind of somewhere, I think I got to like 500 or 600 subscribers, which was incredible. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is finally working. And then, it kind of went from there, really tough going at the beginning. But once YouTube kind of took off and it got a few views and people were aware of it, universities picked it up and endorsed it. And, it kind of got published, everywhere, which was great. And then kind of more social media platforms came along, Instagram kind of converted into more of an educational platform. We had, Twitter come along, TikTok, etc. So I just kind of basically repurposed my content into all of those platforms. And yeah, now TikTok, funnily enough, is my biggest one, even bigger than YouTube. So yeah, which I love. You have so much fun with that. So I do also, all of my platforms are law based, but they're kind of different types of content depending on what the platform is and what the audience is. So TikTok is my most fun kind of tongue in cheek one. I do kind of like role plays and, but they're all law based.
I love your TikToks. Well, and I think that's also what I think is so special about your social media. I think your approach of being real, relatable, and not this stuffy, suit and tie, like I'm a lawyer or a barrister, or Esquire, and I'm so self-important. I think that this is what's so neat about social media. It's like seeing your personality, seeing like your fun, your life, but also you're raw and real. And I think that that's missing in a lot of people who put themselves out there publicly. They're like, I'm only going to display what I want people to see. I feel like you're showing everything. And I think that's like really, really important because people connect with you. And I think that's really, really special. So, I mean, I've got to say, you're doing it right, obviously.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's sometimes a tough balance to get, I think, because obviously, I'm trying to appeal to kind of junior lawyers, aspiring lawyers who are one end of the spectrum, but also, I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm also trying to attract clients who are kind of at the other end of the spectrum. So you've got to kind of get that balance right between kind of being a little, being relatable and being real, but also making sure that you still come across professional, like, what you're doing, so that clients still, want to instruct me. But I think, the legal market market has changed so much now. And I think people, particularly in my line of work, which is a very personal service, you know, the cosmetic surgery and the injury cases, people really have to have a good relationship with you, confide in you about their kind of, you know, deepest, darkest fears. And, you know, you have to have that personal connection. And I think showing that on social media can really help people, you know, can really be the difference between someone choosing you and choosing, you know, a competitor who's just kind of got a very kind of black and white, or like, you know, vanilla advertising, or, you know, they can't see the person. I think in something like that, you know, with the line of work that I do, it's really important that you actually kind of choose your lawyer based on their personality, almost based on somebody that you really genuinely click with and you think is going to understand what you're going through and you feel comfortable talking to. So it has kind of worked well for the client side as well as for the junior lawyer side. It's worked really well on that side as well for getting clients.
Very good. And with the, I mean, you're such in a niche area too. Are you in, would you say you spend a lot of time in courts? Or are you in arbitration? What is kind of the main, I guess, kind of jurisdictional, you know, I guess, playoff that you're using? Like, are you in court? Are you like in a AAA?
Yeah. So when I was practicing, because now that I've gone freelance, which happened earlier this year, I'm actually consulting kind of more on the business side of law than the practice side of law. I've almost kind of swapped sides a little bit. But when I was practicing, more than I am now, I was in court a lot. All my cases are heavily litigated because it's very rare that, you know, most of the people that I'm you know, suing in negligence. That's the basis behind all of my claims. And you very rarely get a cosmetic surgeon or any kind of surgeon who's just very willing to kind of admit fault and just say, you know, here you are and settle. I find like settlement, I mean, because I have done a few cases in the US because of my kind of cross jurisdiction. And I find in the US, they're kind of a lot more willing to entertain settlement early on. But in the UK, and a lot of European countries where I was also, you know, working, representing people in those jurisdictions, because that's where they'd had the surgery. I've found it very, very difficult, you know, very heavily litigated, really just no settlement, no ADR, you know, just fight. So yeah, in court over everything all the time, basically. Wow. Yeah, I was in court probably at least twice a month. Wow. The time on my cases. And yeah, depending on the jurisdiction, which is funny because I guess jurisdictions are different all over the world, legal systems are different all over the world. Absolutely. And you had to adapt to all of them because I was often pursuing cases in like 20 different jurisdictions. So you had to kind of we always had a lawyer who we were working with in that jurisdiction because I can't possibly know the law in all of those countries. So you have to liaise with an agent, we'd call it, who was a lawyer in that country, who would kind of work with us. So we would kind of represent our client in the UK, and then we'd work with them to bring the case in a foreign court if necessary. So really interesting. You got to learn so much about different jurisdictions of law. So that's kind of why I went into that niche, because I just found it so fascinating to kind of see how all these jurisdictions work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we have something similar in the US, as you probably know, local counsel. I mean, because every state, same thing. I mean, state law varies. Federal law, thank heavens, is over here, you know, uniform, but state laws, same thing. We have to get local counsel and, you know, get the experts in those states and have them help us because yeah, no lawyer can know it all, right? I mean, that would be such an unusual expectation. So hard.
Yeah, not like Suits, you know, in Suits where they kind of just have like, they're doing so many different cases, you know, every day is a different type of case, you know, one day they're in medical, the next day they're in property, the next day they're in corporate. That's just unrealistic, isn't it? I mean, really the real side of law is that you really niche down into a specialism. And, you know, if I had, you know, $10 for every time somebody, you know, a friend of mine said, oh, can you help with my property dispute? Oh, can you just advise me on this? No, that's not how it works.
Yes, exactly.
I have one specialism. I don't know the whole of the law. I know this area really well.
I know. And you get the questions out of left field. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I cannot help you. Like, I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'd love to talk to, I mean, you, aside from like your impressive social media and your career, I mean, and just like the amazing amount of followers you have, you also are like, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to like fangirl here. You're winning like awards, Solicitor of the Year, Woman of the Year. Can you tell me a little bit about those and like how those came about?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been very lucky to win a pretty decent chunk of awards over the last few years. That kind of, I think, for a combination really of both sides of what I do. So I had a couple of very important landmark cosmetic surgery cases. I also represented the the victims of the Costa Concordia cruise ship that sunk off the coast of Italy a few years ago, which was a huge case. Yes. So I had a couple of really big, really successful cases, which definitely contributed to those awards massively. But also kind of the other side in terms of what I was doing with social media, because I was kind of one of the first lawyers really to cultivate social media and particularly YouTube for kind of educational purposes and use it in that way. Mm-hmm. So I think kind of it was definitely a combination of what I was achieving in practice and kind of the landmark cases. And also, we made, really, we were one of the first kind of small teams to start taking on these international cases, because again, we started in like 2014, 2015, which is just when the kind of medical tourism boom started and people started to go abroad. And we kind of, our firm decided that we were going to be the people who were going to look into these cases. And there weren't a lot of other firms who were doing that kind of work because it's very technical. You have to work in all these jurisdictions. They're very risky, often very costly, and not a lot of firms are doing it. So I think, we were kind of pioneering in the fact that we were taking on these cases of people who'd been really badly injured in these cosmetic surgery cases abroad. And we were able to take those risks and take those cases forward and be successful in some of them. So it was certainly a combination of what I was doing in practice, but also kind of the side hustle, if you like, for what I was achieving for, really helping junior lawyers and aspiring lawyers to get into practice, get into work, get into jobs. I've got lots of jobs for lots of people and work experience. I've hooked them up with people in my network now that I have such a big network, which is great. I can really use that to help get students who are struggling, who have no network, get them into placements and get them into jobs. So, and just kind of mentor them through the process. So yeah, it's been a busy few years trying to kind of manage the side hustle and the main hustle at the same time. Right. But it really paid off. Which I
also love that you're paying it forward. I think that's something that, especially as a woman in law, we're still, internationally, we're still kind of, in the minority in the practice, but to help other, future aspiring lawyers, but also women, to inspire them to keep going in sometimes niche areas, hard areas, and to reach out and mentor them, I think is just so spectacular. Because you were saying earlier, and I was the same way. I didn't have anybody to go to I kind of had to struggle through it myself and figure it out. And so to be able to go to YouTube back in my day would have been so helpful, just to even watch your videos, or to be able to have a mentor who's been through it. I've just got to tell you how much I think that means to so many women out there who are I want to be her. I want to grow up and I want to be Chrissie. It's so neat. And I think it's so important that you're reaching out to the community too, because some lawyers just don't. They don't mentor. They focus on their career, which understandable, but I think you're winning these awards too, because you're just out there helping people. Aside from your job that helps people, you're helping people. And I just think that's so important for other lawyers to catch on, because that's our next generation. These are the people we will work with eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Mentoring is so important. I had, still do have a number of mentors, in different areas of law, different areas of business, different areas of life. I think you can have mentors for lots of different reasons, and they don't always have to be older and more experienced than you either. You can have reverse mentoring, which can actually be really effective, particularly when I'm thinking about ideas for social media and things like that. I love going to people who are younger than me, a little bit more savvy, and say, hey, it doesn't have to be somebody. And I think sometimes people think that they haven't got anything to give, and that's why they're not mentoring. I'm not good in those situations. I'm not a good communicator. I don't know what I'd say. I don't know how I did what I did. But, everybody has got something to give. Everybody's got experience in something, even if you don't think that you're, a major expert in what you do. You still have life experience, and you've still got something to give back to someone who's just starting out in that same process that you're going down. So I think from both sides, it's so important to mentor, because you get that kind of reverse mentoring element as well. So it's often not one way. We're kind of, we're both mentoring each other, but in different things, because we both had different journeys, different experiences, even if one person's a lot younger than the other. So, really beneficial for both sides to engage in mentoring. So important, definitely.
And the fact that you can mentor across the pond or internationally now, with how connected the world is, how, and probably even more so, that's my assumption, but did your social media presence or your follower count, did it grow substantially during the pandemic, or did you see a change?
So yeah, pretty much I think the first week the UK went into lockdown, I started running a series which I call the Live Lounge on Instagram live interviews. So every week of lockdown, I interviewed a different person on a Monday evening on Instagram. And it became really popular because it was every Monday. It was always somebody kind of within the legal profession, but we talked about different things. And it was just kind of a focal point for everyone to kind of sit down on their Monday night and be like, right, Chrissie's on Monday night. We're going to sit down and listen to who she's interviewing. And definitely that became really popular, and that really helped to grow my social media. And actually that's when I started my TikTok. I started that. And I actually didn't start off doing law related stuff. I started off just doing like stupid dances like everyone else. And then I kind of thought, actually, you know what, I should really repurpose some content on here that's useful. And then actually, as soon as I started doing that, it took off massively. So yeah, it definitely did. Grew hugely during lockdown. And I think because just the world reverted online, and potentially people who had never had social media accounts decided to start them up because that was your way of connecting with people. Suddenly you had no way of connecting with people in real life. So you choose the next best thing, which is social media. So, all social media platforms, I think massively increased in engagement. And I kind of utilized a platform I already had. And that was instrumental actually in me, actually quitting my day job this year. Because, actually my platform had got to such a level, and I connected with so many people that there were so many people then asking me to do work for them. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, actually, I've got enough. And I secured those clients purely through my network that I'd built on social media.
Wow.
And I got to the point where I had so many people kind of asking me to consult for them. I thought, actually, you know what? I think I can do this now. I can actually safely let go of the day job because I have enough consultancy work to replace that, which was a scary decision. I've been in practice at one of the biggest firms in the UK. So it was a big move to make. And it's very scary, I think, when you kind of step away from that umbrella of a big company and all the benefits and perks of being an employee. And then suddenly you're kind of out on your own. And I think one of the scariest things is trying to secure your own work, which you don't do so much of in a big firm. A lot of time that, the firm secures the work and then they pass it to you. So it's a big step actually going out and getting your own work. So, it was kind of, a scary step, but I had enough work. I thought, you know what, I think I can do this, and I don't regret it for a second. But yeah, so
like the life balance, like, did you find, different scenario completely between like the firm grind and like doing your own thing? Or, totally.
Yeah, very much.
You are
very much. I think everyone who's worked for a big firm knows that you're kind of, you're always going to be a kind of small cog in a big wheel, and you're very much kind of dictated to by your employer as what your hours are, when you have to work, all of that. Is very much out of your control a lot of the time, and things can land, in any area of law, things can land on your desk out of nowhere. Classically on a Friday afternoon, you get landed with an application that you've got to do, you've got to be in court on Monday morning now, so you have to spend your whole weekend working, I did that for, the best part of 8 years. I lived that life, and I did my time. And I think it was actually during lockdown that I decided to work remotely from the UAE. So it was October last year when my office closed in the UK, and it closed, for the foreseeable future. And all my court hearings went online. So I was on Zoom call, on Microsoft Teams call, actually. All the client meetings were online. Everything was online. And I just kind of said to my boss, look, because I lived on my own back in the UK. I'm normally a very social person. All of that kind of got taken away. And it was getting more and more miserable in the UK, the weather, getting darker earlier. And I kind of said to my boss, look, the office is going to be closed for a while. Everything I need to do, I can do from a laptop. Do I really need to be in the UK? Can I be somewhere a little warmer and sunnier maybe to do this? And he kind of couldn't really argue with me, because I actually just went for a couple of weeks to take a break in Dubai, and I kind of thought, the time zone isn't so bad from the UK. It's only 4 hours.
Right.
And, actually things were a lot more open. So it wasn't in full lockdown. The UAE did its full lockdown earlier. So it was open. And I kind of thought, you know what? I didn't know anyone, didn't know a single person in the UAE at all. But I thought, I didn't know, but but I was stuck inside in the UK anyway, so I couldn't see any of my friends or family. I was going to speak to them on Zoom anyway, so why not speak to them on Zoom from a beach, you know? So,
1,000%. You have a brilliant idea. I wish I had done that during COVID.
Yeah, and I ended up, I kind of said, look, I'm going to go for a couple of weeks, I'm going to take my laptop, you know, I'm going to be working. And then, you know, the UK went into even further, stricter lockdown. And I just said, look, you know, really, I got my laptop, I'd done all my hours, you know, I was doing everything I needed to do. And I just said, look, can I just stay here a little longer? And he said, yeah, fine. And then it ended up being like 10 months.
10 months later.
Well, you know, it didn't get any better in the UK. It went from bad to worse, to worse, to worse, to worse. And every time I thought about coming home, it just looked so bleak in the UK. So I just kind of said, look, I'm going to stick it out here until things look a little bit more promising in the UK, which is what happened. And then during all that time, I had a number of clients approach me about consultancy, and, you know, I kind of lived this life that was more flexible over here. And I knew that wouldn't be able to continue once things kind of returned to normality in the UK, because, you know, soon it would be back in court, you know, I'd be back in the office. I couldn't just live this kind of flexible life forever. And I kind of thought that I would like to. So, right. Or at least in the short term. I thought I've got enough clients, you know, all the people that approached me for consultancy, people I knew, and I really liked their companies and was really excited about what they were asking me to do. And I thought, you know what, it's going to be super flexible working with them. We all get on really well. It's going to feel like stuff that I probably would have done in my, you know, in my own time anyway, but actually, you know, they're actually going to, you know, employ me or consult me to do that work. And I thought, you know what, I think this is too good an opportunity now, really, you know, now that I've settled into this flexible lifestyle, I don't really want to go back to that grind. I just couldn't imagine going back to, you know, waking up in the dark, trudging to the office in the rain at 7 a.m. You know, I couldn't picture it. You know, I think once
you've tasted that freedom, I don't want to call it freedom. I mean, it's not like we're like, you know, prisoners, but once you've tasted like another side of life, I'm sure that it's just like, I can't go back.
I know, I just couldn't, just the thought of it, I just thought, I don't think I can go back. And now I spend pretty much, I mean, I'm still in the UK mostly. So I'm in the UK for most of the year, but just the kind of coldest months of the winter, I come over here just to kind of escape. I'm not very good in the cold weather. So I'm not based permanently in the UAE at all. You know, just a few months of the year, I come over here just to get some sunshine and work remotely. So yeah.
It's so adventurous though, to pick up somewhere you don't know anybody and go. And I'm sure you've met just bundles of people out there. Well, I mean, I've seen your like Insta and stuff. I mean, you're always meeting people. I mean, I think it's so great and probably just such a fun adventure to go out and know nobody and be like, look, here I am. Let's get to know each other. Let's connect. Let's network. How did you find adapting in a new country where you knew nobody?
Yeah, very strange. I mean, I think when I came here, I don't think I spoke to anybody for about a month. I think I just went to the gym, you know, I worked from home. So you're not really meeting people. I suppose that's one of the drawbacks, you know, working from home, that you don't really, you know, don't meet people in the office and stuff. And then a couple of people said to me like, oh, if you want to meet people, you should there's a load of like expat kind of online groups, like Facebook groups, because people are like, Dubai is a very transient city. Like people are coming and going all the time. Like in the UK, you would never think of posting on Facebook, like, oh, I'm in London. Does anyone want to meet up? Like no one would say yes. It'd be like, no, we have our own friends. Thanks. But you know, in Dubai, like people are here just all the time. You know, people are in and out, they're traveling through for a couple of months for work. That's very much the nature of the city. So a lot of people are in the same boat. They come here, they don't know anyone, and it's very normal just to post and say, hey, I've arrived, I'm here for a couple of months, does anybody want to hang out? Like totally normal. Wow. Felt very alien to do that, because that's just not something that I would ever do.
Strangers, just perfect strangers. Yeah, absolutely.
I just kind of thought, you know, fine, if it's normal. And you know, I put a post down, I got like 50 responses, and people were like, yeah, sure. And then you kind of went from there. So I met up with like a handful of them, because I wasn't going to meet up with like 50 people realistically. So I kind of met up with a handful of people who looked like they kind of were on a similar level, did similar work. And then, yeah, I mean, since then it's obviously spiraled, because we've all met other people, and, you know, there's loads of lawyers, big legal community out here.
Yes.
So I'm doing a bit of work with universities out here with their students as well, kind of trying to do a similar thing to what I'm doing in the UK, but over here in the UAE, because again, there isn't a lot of the kind of what I do with my law and broader side hustle. There isn't really as much of that in the UAE. So I'm trying to kind of bring that over here as well, so I can do that whilst I'm here.
That's fantastic. I mean, and you've got such an amazing personality, I'm sure. Just like everyone's like, let's work with her. We want to work with her right there. So I'm sure that everyone's like, oh my gosh, she's so awesome. You could probably land in, gosh, like the middle of nowhere and end up with like, penguins as friends. I don't know, wherever.
I would certainly try. For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I really enjoy meeting new people, especially in like new jurisdictions, new cultures. And, I really, really enjoy it. So kind of once I settled in, I found it very easy. And once I realized that actually, it's quite normal to go out and speak to people that you don't know, then I was away. I was like, great, I can do this all day now.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, and I would love, we're running out of time, but I would love for you to give maybe a word of advice, maybe that could be universal for, there are probably some younger people either in law school or wanting to go to law school or pursue any kind of legal career. I mean, what's something that has worked for you that you could, advise someone else?
I would probably say two things. I would say kind of one more practical thing and one more kind of mental thing. So I would say one practical thing is build a network. Absolutely. I mean, I would not be where I am now if I hadn't built my network on social media. And that's not to say you have to kind of run 10 platforms like I do and get to 100, you don't have to do that. But I think really try and build connections within your industry as much as possible, whether that be going to events locally, going along to anything that your firm or your business is offering, or your university, even if they have any kind of events, go along any law fairs, anything where you get a chance to meet other people in the industry or other law students, because you never know who might end up being someone really instrumental in your life later on. So absolutely use your resources available to you, whether it's physically attending events or attending online events or building a presence on LinkedIn, for example, which is a good place to start with meeting people in the community. Absolutely build your network, because that will be instrumental to you later on. And it also just gives you that safety blanket. If you do feel like you want to move later on in life, you want to be independent. You don't want to feel like you're relying on your employer to give you your career or to give you your employment. Actually, you want to be in a position where you feel like you could work anywhere and you choose to work there. That's the position that you want to be in. And having a big network gives you that. It gives you that security and that freedom to say, actually, I'm very employable. There's 10 other people that would give me a job at any given moment, but I choose to be in this one. And that's the way you want to get to. I think, that feeling just gives you so much more freedom, and you feel much happier in your job if you know that you have other options, but you're choosing this one.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing I would say is to keep an open mind, definitely, about your career. I mean, I never would have thought that I would be consulting. And now, as I mentioned, I'm consulting in the kind of business side of law now. So I'm actually more consulting in strategy and digital transformation, which is something for in-house teams, which is not something that I ever even heard of when I started out actually in law.
Probably didn't exist.
Exactly. It didn't even exist. When I started, social media didn't exist. Digital transformation is not a topic that I'd ever heard of. And in-house is not a career that I ever thought might be for me, because I saw that as kind of businessy and corporate, but here I am. So I think keep an open mind, because things can change at any time. And I think keep reassessing what you want from your life, because when you start off your life at kind of 18, 20, you have ideals of being partner and that, living your life in, a big office and working 24 hours a day. And that's fine. But you may find when you get to like your late 20s or early 30s that maybe that's not the dream anymore. And that's okay. But you kind of have to keep readjusting your career to fit in line with what your kind of life goals are and how you want to live your life. And I think sometimes people get unhappy when they stay in the same job when actually their life priorities have changed, but they haven't adjusted their career to fit in with that. So I think always just keep reassessing what drives you, what your passion is, and make sure that you are constantly making adjustments to your career to make sure that you are keeping all those things in line. I think that's the secret to a happy career, really, is just being very self-aware and aware of what you want and what makes you happy, what your strengths are, and making sure your career is always working in harmony with those things.
Right. I'm going to be honest with you. That is the best piece of advice I've heard an attorney give on this show. So I mean, you got to be flexible, because you just never know. You never know if you're going to get into it and go, this isn't for me. You're just not, or that you want to pivot and change careers completely, right? I mean, I think that's such good advice, because you just never know until you're in it. You can imagine your job, but until you're in it, you don't have any idea, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes law school, because you've worked so hard to get there and you've got your job at the biggest firm, you kind of almost feel like you have to make that work forever because that's what you worked your whole life for. It's been your dream your whole life. But actually, you know, over time that dream can change, and that's totally okay. But
Yes.
sometimes you can't let go of that because it's what you worked your whole life for. So you have to do it. And it's,
Yes.
no one's dictating your life for you. You know, you have to do what makes you happy. So you've got to keep making sure that you're doing that. And, you know, the old version of you may not be the same as the new version of you.
Oh, precise. I can't end it better. We got to end it at that because that is perfect. Well, Chrissie, thank you so much for joining us today with Lawyer Interviews. And please, I mean, I know you've got your background up there, but let everyone know where they can find you. Throw up your handles.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Chrissie Wolf, YouTube, Law and Broader is my YouTube handle, like Law and Order, but Law and Broader, because I talk about other things apart from law too, the broader side. Right. And also Instagram at @CWolf_LAB. They're all down here as well. And Twitter is the same. And TikTok, I'm at the TikTok Lawyer.
Perfect. So. Well, Chrissie, thank you again. And you have a wonderful, well, it's evening for you.
It
have
is,
a wonderful evening, and thanks for joining us.
You too. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.